Hello, everyone. Tonight, we are drifting just beneath the surface of time, into a world where the sea speaks and murmurs and the sand remembers more than any library. You're floating now over a shallow sea that smells faintly of salt-crushed shells and something older, something that settled here before continents even finished deciding who goes where. It's warm, the kind of warmth that fogs up your glasses if you dared bring them, and the horizon melts into mist like the end of a dream. You probably won't survive long here. Not because of anything dramatic, just because the air isn't yours to breathe, and the local turtles are the size of golf carts and carry their grudges in ivory. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Drop your location in the comments too. What time is it where you are right now? Now turn off the lights. Maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise and let's get started tonight. You shuffle along the edge of the tide pool, or what counts as one in this forgotten epic. The sea here isn't deep, it's barely past your knees, but it stretches wider than your peripheral vision can manage. Light filters through the surface in dappled waves, each ripple casting lace-like shadows over a seafloor stitched with snail tracks and seagrass curls. Somewhere to your left, a crab waves one oversized claw in your direction, either in greeting or offense. The other claw is missing entirely, and you decide not to ask what happened. There's a strange stillness here. Not the absence of life, but the anticipation of something. It's the same quiet you feel before the lights dim in a theater. The fish are unusually still, like they've been asked to hold their breath. The breeze is a little too gentle, as if it's afraid of disturbing whatever is about to unfold. You kneel beside a hummock of sand, feeling the tiny movements of life beneath it. There's a pulse here. Not a heartbeat, exactly more like a rumble. The kind of low vibration that resonates in your knees before your ears catch up. The sand around you shifts slightly, and then again, and then once more in rhythm. That's when you see it, a curved ridge pushing up through the sediment like the edge of a buried plate. It rises slowly, leisurely, until the sand cascades off in soft eddies, and the surface glints in the sun, a shell thick as armor mottled with ancient algae and barnacle colonies that could probably be carbon dated for fun. One eye opens. It's small proportionally, but it holds a kind of gaze you don't get from modern animals. There's no rush, no startle, just patience. As if it's seen things crawl from the sea and go back again, and you're merely the latest flicker in its field of view. A low creak follows, almost metallic, and a second dome stirs several meters away. You'd missed it completely. This one has a scar across its top, etched like a lightning bolt. The first turtle tilts its head slightly, the way a professor might acknowledge a rival in an empty hallway. Nothing hostile. Nothing friendly. Either. Turtles, but not like the ones you know. These are meolanids, though, don't worry, no quiz later. Just know they're built like war chariots with flippers and a penchant for dramatic entrances. Their skulls carry horns that curve backward like a crown, and their jaws could crack a coconut without the courtesy of asking first. But it's the tusks you notice most. Long, pale arcs of bone protruding from either side of their beaked mouths. Not weapons of destruction, but of decision. They start to move. The first slides forward, carving a wake in the sand. The second counters slower but deliberate, turning slightly to angle itself. They don't rush. These creatures are older than urgency. They drift toward each other like two ideas being compared rather than two beasts preparing for battle. Above you, a bird screeches, or what would later become a bird. Something feathered and impatient watching from a stone outcrop. The call echoes down the shallows, ignored entirely by the turtles. There's a notion that these duels happened often long ago, not for territory, and not always for mates either. Historians still debate whether these confrontations served as sorting rituals, non-lethal but symbolic ways to decide something neither you nor I could understand. Maybe they were memory tests, maybe just very slow arguments, You notice now that the fish have returned, but only to the outer edge of the clearing. A few eel-like creatures snake through the silt, keeping respectfully low. Something with too many legs clings to a nearby rock, its eyes like pinpoints. They're not afraid, just reverent. Off topic, but interesting. There's a kind of jellyfish in modern seas that can reverse its aging process. Not relevant, just thought you'd appreciate the company of another creature that plays fast and loose with time. You shift slightly and your foot sends a puff of sand into the water. One of the turtles glances your way, not alarmed, more like annoyed the way someone might sigh at a sneeze in a silent room. You freeze, then nod apologetically. The turtle nods back, or at least it might have. Hard to say with turtles. They're closer now. 10 feet, 5. The water between them grows tighter, thicker with meaning. You feel it in your chest, the press of centuries. Their tusks catch the light, and just before they meet, they stop. Not a full halt, more like a suspension. As if the water has thickened into honey and they're floating in a shared memory. A ritual has begun, and you're not just watching it, you're part of it now. The two turtles hold their distance as if measuring each other's patience, or maybe yours. You wait in the warm shallows, barely breathing while sunlight filters down through a slow-dancing surface. Their shells glitter with microscopic life mosses, barnacles, and one incredibly bold limpet surfing the neck of the larger one like it has season tickets to this ancient performance. Then, as if on cue from some long-dead choreographer, they move. It's not dramatic, no splashes, no sudden lunges, just the gentle, deliberate grace of creatures who have done this before. Countless times, probably. The first turtle slides forward with the confidence of a glacier, tusks dipping slightly into the sand. The second counters with a subtle turn, angling its shell to reflect a passing sunbeam directly into the first's left eye. Cheap shot, but effective. The larger turtle flinches only slightly. You take a small step back and nearly trip over a horseshoe crab. It doesn't even react. The duel is the only story in the water today, and everything else is just background noise. They begin to circle. One slow orbit, then another. Each turn tightens their spiral, pulling them inward like a dance choreographed by gravity. Their flippers push gentle arcs through the sediment, raising faint clouds that swirl around them like stage fog. They leave spiral grooves in the seabed, perfect patterns that no one will see but the worms and you. Boy, you. Every few steps they pause, shifting slightly. Their tusks nudge each other, not with force but with care. Like elderly knights testing the edge of a blade they don't want to use. There's no hiss, no roar. Just the sound of water moving around age-old intention. The tusks touch again. This time with pressure. The larger turtle presses forward, the tusks scraping against its rivals in a slow grind that sounds oddly like two chalkboards making eye contact. You wince. So does a nearby squid, which inks itself out of sheer secondhand discomfort. Let's be clear, this isn't a fight. This is a conversation in a language made entirely of shoves and side-eyes. No one's getting hurt yet. But the stakes feel real. Maybe it's pride. Maybe it's mating rights. Maybe it's something turtles understand and humans forgot when we invented neckties and taxes. Fun fact, the record for the oldest turtle fossil ever found is around 220 million years. That's older than flowering plants. Older than birds. Older than your urge to check your phone during long conversations. And these two, they wear that age like armor, literally. Their shells buried all ridges and pits, scratches and cracks. A constellation of wounds that read like resumes. One has a deep gouge just behind the shoulder blade now, smoothed over with layered growth like a tree swallowing an axe. The other's shell bulges slightly on one side as if healed around a past mistake. Historians still debate whether these tusks evolved for combat or display. The answer is probably both, like high heels or sports cars. Here, they serve as punctuation marks in a grammar of push and posture. The larger turtle shifts its weight and steps in tusks, pressing with more intent this time. The smaller one braces, then counters with a sidestep, dragging its tusks along the inside curve of its opponents like tuning forks. The vibration hums up your legs through the water. Your teeth rattle slightly. The limpet on the larger turtle falls off. Tough day for it. They break contact, just for a moment. Then again, nudge, drag, press. It's a rhythm now. You could set a metronome to it, like a song written in low notes and ancient breath. 1, 2. Pause. 1. Wait. 2. Another fish swims past, oblivious to the age-old war dance spin. It's flat, circular, and has the expression of a fish that's seen things but decided to keep quiet about them. It pauses, watches the turtles for a moment, then drifts away, clearly unimpressed. You briefly consider following it, but the turtles aren't done. Their spirals tighten again. They're nearly shoulder to shoulder now, tusks locked, eyes inches apart. You expect something, a charge, a snap, a sudden show of force. But instead, they simply lean. A test of strength, of will, of weight. Shell pressed to shell, tusk pressed to tusk. No winner, no loser, just two enormous beings saying, "I'm still here." And then something odd happens. The larger turtle barely gently lowers its head, not in surrender, not in shame, more like an acknowledgement, a shared truth passing silently between them. The smaller one doesn't gloat, just matches the gesture. Their tusks disengage with a whisper. No fanfare, no drama. You've seen louder breakups in coffee shops. This might be done, or not. You've learned by now that ancient animals move on ancient timelines. What feels like a climax might just be a breath. Still, there's a shift in the water, a softness. The tension that once curled like a fist has loosened, uncoiled, drifted apart like fog after sunrise. And hey, not to derail the vibe, but octopuses have been known to throw shells at fish they don't like. Just a thought. In case you were wondering who wins the passive-aggressive sea creature award, the turtles don't throw anything. They just wait. You can feel them deciding what happens next. The whole sea seems to lean in, waiting for their verdict. Even the barnacles stop filtering. Another step, another tusk nudge. But this time it's more of a farewell tap, like fist bumping before a nap. The spiral breaks. They turn slowly, deliberately away from each other. Not retreating, just moving on. One heads toward the inner lagoon where the reeds sway like lazy dancers. The other drifts toward the reef shadows, vanishing inch by inch into deeper blue. You're left standing in the middle, the water around your knees still warm, still humming with the echo of tusks and time. The water is quieter now, but it's not done speaking. You stand still as the turtles part ways, their long wake lines trailing off like sentences left unfinished. But before their presence fades completely, something remains. Something beneath your feet. The sand. It shifts with a life of its own, not the startled scatter of fish or the sleepy churn of worms. This movement is patterned, purposeful. As the turtles circled, they carved arcs into the seabed, and now those arcs remain overlapping, intersecting, forming wide spirals that seem to pulse even after their makers have gone. You step back carefully and look down. The impression is almost too perfect, like it was drawn by a giant compass made of ivory. The spiral holds your gaze. It's not just a trail, it's a story. The sand has recorded the duel, but not in aggression, more like a conversation left etched on the floor of an ancient ballroom. And for a moment, you can almost read it. A swirl here for a challenge, a crisscross there for hesitations. That tight curve was that where one of them paused, and this deep tusk mark in the center. Oh, what happened here? Historians still debate whether ancient animals like these left intentional markings, or if we humans just can't resist projecting meaning onto anything vaguely spiral-shaped. But standing there under a dappled sun and knee-deep in memory, you know this wasn't random. This was ritual. Even the fish seemed to recognize the sacred geometry. They return, but with restraint. None swim directly over the carved lines. Instead, They orbit the marks the way tourists circle ancient ruins, unsure if they're allowed to touch anything. A long-snouted garfish floats past with its jaw agape, looking like it forgot why it came into the room. Same, buddy. Suddenly, the sand pulses again. You freeze, scanning the floor, but it's not from below, it's from above. A small current pulls through the shallows, playful but firm, and it begins lifting strands of sand into the water. Slowly, the spiral starts to blur, like a chalk drawing in the rain. One minute it's sacred geometry, the next it's dissolving poetry. You wade backward, not wanting to step on anything important. Your heel bumps something hard. You turn and find a piece of tusk, just a fragment. Palm-sized, curved with a creamy sheen and a texture like antique piano keys. You lift it, half expecting it to hum. It doesn't, but it feels warm somehow. Warm and patient, like it's been waiting for you. Here's a fun sidebar: tusks in turtles were once thought to be purely ornamental. Then someone found a fossil with one lodged in another's carapace. The scientific community had a brief existential crisis, and then, as always, filed it under multifunctional adaptations and moved on. The tusk fragment in your hand could have broken off years ago, or minutes. It's impossible to tell. Time doesn't move in a straight line here. It loops and sways like seaweed in the tide. You pocket the fragment gently with the guilty reverence of someone stealing a souvenir from a sacred site and keep moving. The spiral beneath you fades further with every step until only a ghost of it remains, and even that eventually gives up. Ahead, the seafloor rises slightly, and you enter a part of the shallows where the sand is firmer, almost like clay. It carries the same reddish hue as dried blood, but don't worry, no one's bleeding yet. The tide pools here are deeper and shaped like petals. Each one holds a stillness that feels too deliberate to be natural. In one of the pools, a second spiral rests smaller, tighter. This one's older. You can tell because algae have grown across part of it, and a tiny shrimp has built a house right in the middle like some kind of interpretive vandal. You crouch again, fingers grazing the cool surface of the pool. The grooves in the clay are shallow but distinct. This spiral was made by smaller turtles, younger maybe. Or maybe another kind entirely. You can't tell, but they knew the same pattern. They danced the same dance, or argued, or flirted. It's all the same, really. It's odd how much history never gets recorded in bones or books. The majority of ancient behavior, especially rituals, leaves no fossil record at all. Scientists call it behavioral invisibility. Everything you're seeing? It technically doesn't exist. Lucky you. You move on slowly, tracing a wide arc along the shallows. The turtles are long gone now, vanished into deeper realms. But their spiral lingers in your head like a song you heard in a dream. The rhythm of the sand. The quiet shoves. The deliberate turns. Another breeze passes through, and for a moment the water vibrates again very faintly. It almost sounds like breathing, but slower, deeper, as if the sea itself is still exhaling the last notes of the performance. You spot another fragment half buried in silt, a sliver of shell. This time the edge ridged like fossilized lace. When you pull it free, the underside is smooth and pinkish like an old seashell. Held up to your ear, you try. No sound. But it smells faintly of salt and moss and something floral you can't quite name. A shadow passes overhead. You glance up, expecting a bird or one of those fish with wings that forgot how to fly. But it's just a low-hanging cloud gliding across the sun. The light dims. The shallows cool. And in that moment, you realize how fragile all of this is. The spiral is gone now. The tides erased most of it. The grooves, the prints, even the tusk marks, all fading like secrets whispered underwater. But you still feel them. In your bones, or maybe just in your calves. Standing this long in one place is surprisingly hard on the body. Still, the memory holds, and that's something. You follow the shoreline where the turtles once stood. Their wide spiral, now fully dissolved, but its rhythm lingers in your steps. The water is thigh-deep here and thick with sunbeams, and you can't shake the sensation that you've wandered into the middle of a ceremony that started millions of years before you arrived. A soft scrape echoes through the water ahead. There, just beyond the edge of a kelp tangle, two shapes glide slowly across the bottom. They're back. The same tusked turtles, or at least two just like them. Their outlines blur and shimmer in the rippling light, but there's no mistaking the slow dignity in their pace. They meet again. There's no hesitation this time, no circling, no drawn-out introduction. Their tusks lock gently on first contact like hands finding each other in the dark. Not violent, not even rough. You could almost mistake it for tenderness if not for the weight behind it. They press, shoulder to shoulder, shell to shell, tusk to tusk. The sound is soft, almost pleasant, like stone brushed against bone. They shift, lean, adjust 1 inch this way, 2 inches that. No dramatic clashes, no sudden moves. This is not a fight. This is choreography. The older of the two, the one with the scar, leans in harder, its tusks pressing just enough to flex the other's neck. The smaller turtle shifts sideways and lowers itself 1 inch, using the terrain for leverage. Clever, maybe even smug. You can practically hear it saying, "Oh, we're playing like that now." Fun detour sea turtles today use subtle head movements and flipper taps to court each other. It's less a dance, more a negotiation. One flipper touch too strong, and the whole deal's off. Love, it seems, has always required impeccable balance and mild social awkwardness. Back in the shallows, the duelers are now shoulder to shoulder, pushing with slow insistence. Their tusks grind against each other in long horizontal arcs, like ancient gardeners tilling some invisible trench. You hear the occasional creak from their shells, a tired but determined sound. It's not pain, it's effort, commitment even. You watch closely. They're testing each other's weight now, taking small steps forward and sideward in tight, controlled shuffles. Each movement is intentional. The larger turtle attempts a pivot, trying to push the smaller onto its weaker side. The smaller one counters with a half-turn and a quick jab, barely a bump, but it throws the rhythm off for just a beat. Both pause. Bubbles drift up between them. A nearby anemone waves lazily in your direction as if to say, "Can you believe the drama?" You nod. Honestly? Same. One of the turtles shifts suddenly, not forward but up. It plants its front limbs and lifts slightly, rising above its opponent, just enough to let the tusks slide free, and then drops them again with a hollow thud. Not enough to hurt, just enough to be firm. Historians still debate whether these motions were part of dominance rituals or something closer to a mating display. The line between seduction and power play has always been a bit blurry, especially when both parties are made of armor and stubbornness. You notice now that neither turtle is blinking. Their eyes are open, fixed on each other. Wide, ancient eyes that seem to hold the weight of the seabed itself. It's unsettling how little expression they have. There's no anger, no joy, just knowing. As if they remember each other's shells from 1,000 tides ago. They break contact again, just briefly. They circle once more, their flippers kicking up soft clouds of sand. The sediment swirls and settles, and, in its wake, the two tusked titans resume their gentle contest. This time it's slower, heavier, like they've reached the middle of a conversation and need to repeat themselves to make a point. You shift your weight to one side and a soft pop escapes from your knee. Both turtles stop. Look at you. Right, sorry. Oh, flykinny. You freeze like someone who's just sneezed during a wedding vow. But after a few still seconds, they return to their spiral, gracefully ignoring you. That's fair. The tide pulls gently at your calves, now rising slightly. Sea foam gathers at the edges of the rock pools. Above, a distant rumble reminds you that the earth is still shifting, breathing, building mountains beneath the ocean, while turtles slowly bump faces in the foreground. You wonder what the point of all this is. Not in a cynical way, just curiously, why the tusks, why the ritual? Why this intricate, time-consuming ballet that could have been settled with a shove and a splash? Maybe the answer is the same reason humans shake hands? Or bow? Or flirt awkwardly near coffee machines? Ceremony matters, especially when survival isn't just about who eats whom, but who remembers how to move with meaning. A random detail floats through your head. Some prehistoric turtles had clubbed tails like medieval maces. This isn't relevant here, but you respect the vibe. The turtles press in once more. This time the larger one lowers its tusks beneath the smaller's, hooking gently. A small lift. Not aggressive, not invasive, like offering support or asking a question. The smaller turtle doesn't resist, doesn't retreat. It leans in. Their shells touch again. You hold your breath. For a few long moments, there's no movement. Just pressure. Wait. The sea rests around them in a perfect stillness. Then at last they ease apart slowly, gracefully, as if pulled by tides only they can hear. You exhale quietly, and they don't look back. You don't notice the audience at first, not until the water stirs behind your knees, and something slips past your peripheral vision with the grace of a shadow and the self-importance of a theater critic. A long, narrow snout, two eyes just above the surface, a tail that curls like a drifting question mark. One of the old ones, a crocodiliform, its skin dappled with silt and scale, its expression unreadable. Not hungry, not scared, just watching. You shift slightly to the side and realize you're not alone anymore. Dozens of eyes peer out from reeds, coral crevices, and shallow holes in the sand. Fish of all shapes and prehistoric affiliations hover at the edge of the clearing. Bony tongues, early rays. A soft-bodied sea phalapod that looks like it regretted evolving limbs but now refuses to go back. They've come to see the duel, not with popcorn, not with signs, not even with expectation, just presence. Like spectators at a ritual they don't fully understand but feel obligated to witness out of some species-level memory they inherited without knowing it. The turtles, meanwhile, are still drifting apart. One heads toward a patch of eelgrass, the other toward a ledge that overlooks a miniature canyon where tiny trilobites scrabble across the rock. The duel is done for now, but no one leaves. The air, or rather the water, feels heavy with post-performance silence. The crocodiliform huffs softly and lowers its chin to the sand. Not sleeping, not hunting, just observing with the sort of flat patience that only creatures with unblinking eyes can manage. You crouch too, feeling a little awkward, like you've wandered into a room of professional lurkers and forgot to bring snacks. The smaller turtle shifts position and rests beside a coral outcrop. It's close enough now that you can see the scratches along its tusks. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. Some faint and smooth like ghost etchings. Others deep and fresh, sharp like new lines in an old diary. The shell behind those tusks is massive. You know that. But here so close it feels even larger, wide enough to serve dinner on, thick enough to repel time itself. Around its rim, tiny mollusks have latched on like jewelry. The ocean loves to accessorize. The other turtle, now further off, kicks up a thin trail of bubbles as it maneuvers around a rocky bend. One flipper is slower than the others, possibly old injury or just the aquatic version of a limp. You imagine it wincing, but then again, turtles are masters of stoicism. They could be composing haiku and you'd never know. A blue-striped fish darts in and nibbles something off the larger turtle's shell. Symbiosis at work. Or freeloading. Historians still debate whether ancient cleaning behaviors were mutualistic or simply tolerated out of laziness. Either way, it's oddly intimate. The crowd in the water remains respectfully distant. Even the more aggressive species, those sharp-jawed swimmers and finned ankle-biters, hang back. There's a hierarchy here, not of dominance, but of ritual. Everyone understands the gravity of what just happened, except perhaps the squid. It's returned, in case you were wondering. The same squid from before, or at least a cousin. This one's taken up position near your left foot, waving one arm toward the turtles like it's narrating for a crowd only it can see. You try not to laugh, but let's be honest, it's giving real community theater understudy energy. Overhead, a few long-necked reptiles wheel through the sky, their cries distant, reedy, and uncaring. The sea ignores them. The turtles ignore them. You try, but end up glancing up anyway. Something about shadows in the water always makes you nervous. You refocus. The smaller turtle lifts its head. Very slowly, its eyes scan the space not in fear but in recognition. It sees the crocodilian, the fish, you, maybe not as individuals, but as parts of the pattern. And you suddenly realize that what you're watching is a performance but not for entertainment. This is communication, broadcasting, a slow-motion signal to the reef and beyond. I am here. I have survived. Oh, I have not been bested. The larger turtle rises just a little too, and you see that even in separation, they're still in rhythm, still mirroring each other. One begins a slow paddle along the reef's edge, brushing its tusks against the coral. A gesture of farewell, a declaration. The crowd ripples slightly in response. It's like a standing ovation if fish had hands. The crocodiliform lifts its snout an inch. The cephalopod spins lazily. Even the squid gestures with renewed enthusiasm, clearly proud of itself. And then slowly the audience begins to disperse. One by one they peel away, rejoining their lives, their currents, their petty squabbles over territory or food. The duel is over, and the message has been received. A record has been kept. Not in writing, not in song, but in presence. You remain a moment longer. The turtles drift further apart, fading into the gentle light like massive ghosts. You catch a final glimpse of the scarred shell disappearing behind a stand of kelp. The smaller one, still visible, settles near the reef, seemingly at peace. Just before it disappears into shadow, it lowers its head, rubbing one tusk along the seafloor again. A signature. You blink, and it's gone. The crowd has gone. Even the squid eventually spins itself out and glides away like a mime exiting a stage no one asked it to be on. The crocodiliform remains a moment longer, eyes still fixed on the reef where the turtles disappeared. You half expect it to offer a review, an adequate performance. Too much tusk, not enough twist, but it simply blinks and slides backward into a bed of reeds without so much as a farewell. You're alone again, ankle-deep in silence. Well, not quite silence. The sea is never truly quiet. There's always something distant, crackles of shrimp, the low hum of shifting sand, the occasional burp of a fish that refuses to chew with its mouth closed. But the tension that once thickened the water is gone now. The duel has ended, and with it the electricity in the air has fizzled into something slower. Reflective, heavy in a different way. You wander further into the tide flats. Here the light glints off the surface in long ribbons, and every step you take sends spirals of sediment twirling around your legs. The water deepens gradually up to your waist, then your chest, until you're more floating than walking. You let yourself drift. Then something brushes your foot. You jerk, not a big movement, just a twitch, but in these ancient waters, every motion feels like a decision. You look down and find a ridge, faint but wide, a shallow arc gouged into the sand. Not fresh, but not yet erased either. You follow it. The ridge grows deeper, clearer. It winds like a question written in cursive. You swim along it, dragging your fingers lightly through the soft bottom. There are other ridges here too, some parallel, some intersecting, a whole network of impressions carved into the seabed. And then you see it. A shell, half buried in silt, enormous, cratered with time and cracked in the middle like a canyon frozen mid-collapse. It's not moving, and it won't. This one is long dead. You hover above it, unsure whether to feel reverent or spooked. The shell is vast, easily the size of a small car, and covered in marine growth that clings like old regrets. A starfish rests along its ridge like a crown. You can't tell if the creature died in battle of age or simply lay down and let the sea take it. Its tusks, though, those are still visible. Just the tips barely poking out of the sediment like twin parentheses. They're worn, pitted, but unmistakable. You reach out and touch one. It's cold. This is the first time you've truly grasped how ancient this all is. Not just the turtles, not just the duel, but the very memory of dueling. It's fossilized here, preserved in silence. A whisper passed from shell to shell, from tusk to tusk, and now, maybe to you. Odd fact break. Some ancient turtles could breathe through their butts. Yup, cloacal respiration. Very efficient, very awkward to explain at dinner parties, but it proves a point. Life always finds a way to be weird. And persistent. Back at the shell, something stirs. Not the turtle. That ship has long sailed, but the sediment around it. Tiny creatures bristle, worms, amphipods move in the cracks like janitors cleaning up after a cathedral service. Life goes on. Even here, you notice now the scarring. Deep gouges along the top of the shell. Several. Crisscrossed. This turtle fought or danced or something in between. You can trace the marks with your fingers. Each tells part of a story, a push, a tusk slide, a desperate countershove. Historians still debate whether these scars came from rivals' predators or simply the abrasive process of living too long. No one agrees. No one has to. You break the surface for a moment, letting your face feel the warmth of the sun. The sky is wide and pale with streaks of high clouds that drift like the ghosts of mountains. For a second, it feels like nothing up there has changed. As if the sky has always watched over this place. Maybe it has. You dive again. Just a few feet below, the water thickens with memory. You follow more shell fragments, thin slices scattered across the seafloor like bone confetti. Some are paper thin, some solid as ceramic. One looks like it's been bitten, another like it cracked from sheer pressure. These are stories no one recorded, just left here, embedded in the floor. You reach a sandbank shaped like a saddle and rest there, letting the water lap around your shoulders. Behind you, the abandoned shell looms, a quiet sentinel to whatever ritual once unfolded here. Your mind drifts to the turtles you saw earlier. Where are they now? Still gliding beyond the reef, still whispering in tusk and flipper to some unseen audience, or already forgotten, their marks erased by a shifting tide, and replaced by another pair and another forever. Back on the sandbank, you notice something odd. A series of small scratches. Not gouges, not tusk marks, just narrow lines like someone traced their claws or beak in a repeating pattern. You squint. The marks form a loose arc, then another, like a spiral, fainter, smaller. Could this be the beginning? A hatchling, maybe. A juvenile. Mimicking the ritual of the giants. Practicing for a future duel or just playing. You can't tell. But it's humbling. Even turtles rehearse. And suddenly you're smiling. Because the sea is full of echoes. Some loud, some buried, and some scribbled in the sand by a tiny, overconfident baby turtle who watched two titans clash and thought, yeah, I can do that too. The water around you darkens slightly. Not threatening, just deepening. The tide's shifting again. You feel the sand stir beneath your toes as if the sea itself is ready to turn the page. So you rise slowly and begin to walk again. The shell, the scars, the scratches, they'll remain for a while. Until the next current comes, or the next turtle, or the next curious time traveler with questions and flippers. For now, though, the shallows remember, and so do you. The water laps gently against your hips as you make your way back across the shallows, but the turtles are nowhere to be seen. It's as if they never existed at all. No shadows, no ripples, no lingering trails. Just a faint current curling around your knees and the hush of a reef trying not to be noticed. But then you catch something. Not movement, not light pattern. A stretch of the sea floor where the sediment seems too neat, too deliberate. The sand has been swept in long arcs again, and not by the tide. These are marks of motion, of ritual. You pause beside it, squinting through the water. The spiral's faint but unmistakable. Not wide like before, tighter, more practiced. A smaller turtle, maybe? Or a different one entirely? It's recent, the silt hasn't yet settled, and it's different. Slower, less aggressive, as if this dancer is learning new steps. And then from the shadows, they re-emerge. Two turtles again, but not the same ones. These are leaner, smaller, younger, or simply different in posture, you can't say for sure. Their tusks are shorter, smoother, not yet weathered by age or ritual, but they circle just like before, slowly, carefully, as if testing the rules. Their movements are more hesitant. The nudges come lightly, the tusks only brushing now and then. It's almost sweet. Less duel, more question. You watch as one circles in, then flinches slightly as its tusk taps the other's shell. It retreats, rethinks, adjusts, then tries again. A slow, spiraled negotiation. You grin without meaning to. It's like watching teenagers trying to dance at a school formal. All elbows and awkward glances. But there's grace too. A future rhythm starting to find itself. Somewhere deep down, the same ceremony continues. Odd historical footnote. Certain turtle species still engage in face-off displays today, pressing snouts and gently pushing to determine pecking order. And no, there's no referee. Just a mutual agreement to not take it too far unless someone really wants to ruin the mood. You shift slightly, careful not to disrupt their slow, watery waltz. The younger turtles ignore you. That's a relief. You don't want to interrupt this, whatever this is. It doesn't feel like a fight, it feels like rehearsal, like memory being passed through motion. You can't help but wonder, do turtles learn this from one another? Or is it baked in from the start, like a melody embedded in their shells? Historians still debate whether ancient animal rituals were inherited or instinctive, but watching these two, it feels like both. The smaller of the pair leans in too far and stumbles slightly, flipper skidding in the sand. Its tusk slips beneath the other's shell and clinks audibly. Both turtles freeze. You hold your breath. The fish nearby pause. Even the coral seems to listen. And then just a slow, subtle adjustment. The turtles ease apart, no panic, no retreat, just correction. The dance resumes a little slower now, a little wiser. It's like watching two kids who realized they were arguing about nothing and quietly agreed to move on without ever admitting fault. The spiral beneath them grows sharper, the grooves cleaner. Their hesitation gives way to confidence. They circle tighter now, tusks grazing with quiet precision. Each nudge is deliberate, measured, learned. This isn't clumsiness anymore, it's rhythm. And you realize something. You've just watched a rite become a rule. You've watched imitation become instinct. The crowd begins to return, not as thick as before, but still present. A few ribbon fish with translucent skins hover near the edges. An armored lungfish snorts from a burrow like it disapproves of the whole affair. Even the squid's back. This time with seaweed on its head, like a makeshift crown. You ignore it. So does everyone else. The two turtles press tusks again. This time the pressure lingers longer. Not forceful, but deliberate. One begins to lower its head, the gesture uncertain at first, then firm. The other follows suit, matching angle, matching weight, and then they hold it. That quiet, suspended moment. No motion, no sound, just presence. It lasts longer than you expect. So long you begin to feel like an intruder. But before you can slip away, they part. Gently, effortlessly. Each turtle paddles off in opposite directions, but unlike the last duel, there's no sense of strain or fatigue. They don't flee, they glide. They've learned something, and maybe so have you. You watch as one of them pauses at the edge of a sandbar and dips its head. It traces a new spiral. Small. Subtle. But there, not dominance. Not for conflict, just memory. A signature. A soft hello to the future. And that's the thing about ritual, whether you're a turtle, a time traveler, or just some squid trying to make it in the performance arts, it's not always about winning. Sometimes it's just about remembering, and sometimes about leaving a mark. Even if the tide will soon take it away, the water has cooled. You notice it slowly, first around your ankles, then your spine, like someone exhaling gently down the back of your neck. A current drifts in silent and unwelcome, curling through the shallows like a question no one wanted to ask. It doesn't belong here. It smells different, feels heavier. The younger turtles feel it too. One of them stops mid-glide, tusks half lowered. The other tilts its head slow and uncertain before swimming a tight defensive circle. Their spiral breaks. It doesn't collapse, just unravels carefully. The current slides over your skin. It's colder than the rest of the sea. Not icy, just unfamiliar. The kind of chill that comes not from temperature but from depth. It carries something from beyond the reef. Beyond the visible, beyond safe. A flicker moves through the water. You whip around, but there's nothing. Just shadows beneath the kelp. And maybe one that was a little too fast. Somewhere out in deeper water, you hear a distant hum. It's low and wide and thrums in your bones more than your ears. You turn again instinctively. The reef is behind you now. The turtles, still visible but further off, have stopped completely. No more dancing, no more tusk tapping, just stillness. And stillness can be louder than a scream. The cold current tightens around your legs like a rope. You look down. The sand is rippling, yes, but differently now, less from the tide, more from something deeper pushing up against it. It's like the sea itself is bracing. And that's when it hits you. This has happened before. Not just the turtles, not just the spiral. The interruption. Something that doesn't move with the dance. Something that doesn't care for the rules. This is part of the ritual too, the part no one wants to remember. A flash, just for a second, far out in the blue, a shape. Sleek, broad, too fast. You blink, but it's gone. You take a slow, shaky breath, then another. Here's a weird fact to distract you: ancient crocodilians once roamed both fresh and saltwater. Some had armor-plated tongues. One species may have even been semi-bipedal. That's right, half croc, half dinosaur energy, which is frankly too much personality for a predator. But this isn't a croc. You know that now. Whatever's out there, whatever the current carried with it, it doesn't watch the duel. It doesn't linger in the reeds. It doesn't leave spirals. It cuts across history like a blade. The turtles shift again. The younger one tucks its tusks tight against its chest and sinks lower. The elder stays upright, positioning itself between the reef and the open water. A protective stance, quiet, not flashy, just intentional. You float silently, barely moving. You don't want to draw attention either. The cold current thickens. You taste metal now, faint like blood in the air after a rainstorm. The reef fish are gone again, vanished without splash or drama. The squid too has disappeared. Smart. Even the crocodiliform is nowhere to be seen. It's like the whole sea remembered something all at once and decided to forget you. A shadow looms, not above, below. It passes underneath you so slowly you barely register it at first. Wide, unhurried, a silent drift of mass. You can't make out the shape, only the outline, the absence of light. A thing too old for classification, too big for this depth. It doesn't attack, doesn't charge, just moves. And yet its presence slices through the shallows like fear itself. The younger turtle stays down, hiding. The elder turns ever so slightly. Tusks angled now, not in dance but in defiance. You want to shout, don't, but this place has its own language and you were never invited to learn it. Historians still debate whether these rituals included defensive elements. If tusks weren't just for display or courtship but for guarding territory. Or each other. Some say yes. Others say turtles didn't care about anything but food and heat. You now suspect the turtles know more about loyalty than we do. The shadow vanishes. Not in a direction, it just ceases like it was never there. But the current lingers, the chill in the water remains, and the turtles, both of them, stay utterly still. Then a flicker. Movement, not a predator, just a school of translucent fish drifting back and testing the current. And then another. Life once paused, pressing play again. Hesitantly, the elder turtle raises its head. You expect it to leave, swim away, but instead it turns back to the younger one. Waits. The younger turtle lifts its snout, trembling slightly, not in fear, but in confusion. Like a child asking, was that supposed to happen? And the answer is yes. Because not all duels end in spirals. Some end in silence, in shadows. In rituals remembered more for what stopped them than for what they proved. The elder dips its tusks low in the water just once, then rises again. A signal, not to resume, just to acknowledge. We saw it. We survived it. We still remember. The cold current begins to thin. The warmth returns slowly, like someone letting go of your wrist. You exhale without realizing you were holding your breath. You look out toward the reef, stillness. No sign of the threat. No sound either. Just water lapping, just sun overhead, just two turtles reclaiming the space between them. And then you hear the sand whisper again. A spiral, soft, barely there. Not from a fight, not from a dance. Just from presence, just from persistence. You stay very still now, floating in the hush left behind by the shadow. The sea doesn't speak in words, but it remembers how to hold its breath. Around you, the water feels cautiously neutral again, like a room after someone slams the door and leaves. Not quite calm, just waiting to see if it's really over. And so are the turtles. They hover near each other now, not close, not spiraling, just near. The younger one drifts with the hesitant grace of something that knows it was almost seen. The elder has resumed its sentinel posture, tusks slightly raised, head angled toward the deep. Neither of them moves to restart the ritual. Neither leaves. You sink lower, letting your toes touch the ripple-patterned sand again. The current has settled, but it left a memory behind. The cold still clings in odd places, your wrist, your shoulder blades, your spine. It'll take time for the warmth to return, if it ever does. The two turtles regard each other. There's a pause here. Not a dramatic one, but a real one. A held moment, as if each is waiting to see what the other remembers, what the other learned. They drift slightly apart, then back again. Not a spiral, not even a circle, just an orbit. A mutual proximity. No tusks touch. No shells grind. They move like planets too shy to collide. You know what this is. It's the moment after the ritual. After the danger. When everyone knows something has changed but no one's sure what. The elder turtle finally leans in just a little. A half gesture. No contact. Just the suggestion of it. The younger one doesn't respond right away. Then slowly it mirrors the motion. Their tusks are inches apart. That's all. And that's everything. It's strange how the most powerful moments don't come with noise. They come with restraint. With choices not made. Blows not struck. Spirals not resumed. You let out a slow breath and even the water seems to sigh with you. Here's a strange but charming fact. In some species of sea turtles, males have been observed gently stroking a female's cheek with their flippers during courtship. No real reason. It doesn't help them mate. It's just contact. And maybe that's the entire point. You wonder if what you're seeing now is the oldest version of that same gesture. Less about dominance, more about connection, about presence, about saying you're still here. So am I. The turtles begin to move again, but not toward each other. This time they both glide outward. Parallel lines, not spirals. Not in retreat, just in motion, just continuing. And suddenly you see the seabed differently. Every groove, every swirl of disturbed sand, every faint line etched into the floor of this ancient tide pool, it's all part of a conversation. Not just between turtles, between the sea and itself, the past talking to the present, rituals speaking through time, and you somehow are listening in. The elder turtle passes close by you now. You can see the gouges on its shell in vivid detail. Some are old, white-edged, and smooth. Others look fresher, though none are bleeding. You count 6 long scars, 2 crosswise. They look like claw marks, but not from any modern predator you can name. Historians still debate whether these turtles ever fought to the death. Fossils suggest some suffered injuries, but the evidence is sparse. It's hard to fossilize intention. The turtle's eye meets yours for just a moment. No fear, no curiosity, no judgment, just notice. Then it moves on. The younger one follows a moment later, trailing behind with a slightly uneven stroke of the flippers. It pauses once back near the kelp forest, nudges a patch of silt with the edge of its tusk, leaves a line. Not a spiral, just one smooth curve. Maybe a signature, or maybe just a twitch. You float quietly, the weight of the encounter still wrapped around your shoulders. There are no trumpets here. No claps, no conclusions. Just a pair of turtles that met, moved, paused, and chose not to finish what history expected of them. There's a comfort in that. You wade slowly to a higher sandbar water, now only waist-deep, and sit. The waves kiss your knees as they pass. A trio of flat-bodied fish shuffle by unbothered. A clump of seaweed attaches itself to your calf like a clingy toddler. You let it. You think of all the things the sea forgets, and all the things it remembers. The spirals, for one, they don't last. The tide erases them. The fish kick through them. Even the turtles themselves disturb their own dance. But they leave impressions, in sand, in current, in others. And now in you. Off to your left, something small breaches the surface, a splash, a fin, a fluke you never quite see. But the turtles don't react. They're already far from each other, drifting in separate directions. The duel is done, whatever it was. But you can't help thinking, what if it wasn't a duel at all? What if it was never about winning? What if it was simply about meeting? Two ancient bodies occupying the same sliver of sea, recognizing each other and saying in the only language they had, "I see you." And now here you are, the only one still lingering in the shallows. The tide is rising again. The marks in the sand are fading. The chill in the current is gone. Warmth returns slow and soft. But the pause remains. That moment when tusks nearly touched and neither flinched. You hold on to that. The sun begins to dip low, staining the shallows in amber and tarnished bronze. That same warm glaze now settles across your skin, and for the first time in a while, the water stops feeling like a warning. It simply breathes again, expanding, contracting, washing over the sand like a sleeping lung. You are still watching the turtles, or more accurately, the places where they were. One has disappeared beyond the kelp curtain, and the other drifts along the reef's edge, turning in lazy arcs. Not spirals. No rhythm this time. Just movement for the sake of it. It doesn't seem interested in repeating the dance. Maybe that ritual was a one-time thing. Maybe, like all good stories, it doesn't beg to be told twice. Above, the clouds stretch thin like fingers that forgot what they were reaching for. The light is perfect in that way. It gets just before it decides to leave sharp at the edges, soft in the middle. You look around and realize something: the sea has gone golden. And somehow everything is quieter under that color. You move toward the turtle, still in sight. Not too close. You've learned better than that. But near enough to feel its presence again. Its flippers trail through the sand, leaving only half-hearted indentations now. Its tusks stay low, brushing seaweed, nudging little shells aside. Its head tilts not in alertness but in thought. Or maybe memory. It stops. You stop too. And then, in a gesture so small you almost miss it, it lifts its head. Not high, not dramatically, just enough to catch the fading light on the curve of its tusk. The water catches, too shimmering for a moment, and then still. You realize it's deciding. You're not sure what. Maybe whether to dive. Maybe whether to leave entirely. Maybe something else altogether, something we no longer remember how to ask. Because here's the thing about prehistoric turtles: they didn't move quickly, but they moved with finality. Every step had the weight of centuries. These creatures weren't racing to get somewhere. They were simply continuing, as if the world would shape itself around their decisions. And this one it turns. Just a slight angle of the body, a shift in the shell, and suddenly it's no longer heading along the reef, it's aiming back toward the wide-open shallows, the very heart of the spiral. Back where the dance began, not to repeat it, to close it, to place the final mark. The water deepens under its belly. The tide is climbing now. Soon the lines in the sand will be gone. The signatures erased. The spiral just a ghost in memory. But the turtle doesn't hurry. It knows. It reaches the center, and there in the middle of nothing, it pauses, lowers its head, and taps one tusk softly into the sand. A single crescent mark. That's it. Historians still debate whether these gestures were territorial, ceremonial, or purely coincidental. They argue over tusk angles, shell positions, sediment displacement. But none of them were here. None of them saw this turtle press its tusk into a disappearing world with the grace of someone writing a final line on a page already turning to dust. The turtle lifts its head again and without looking back begins to paddle away. You want to follow, but you don't. Because this isn't about you, it never was. This was a ritual between creatures who understood something you never will. Who met not to win, not to wound, but to remember. To perform a gesture so old that even the sea forgot what it meant. Until today. The turtle's outline fades into the golden water edges, softening body blurring. You stand in the shallows, silent. The tide creeps past your knees, swallows the spiral's center, slips across the old scars like an eraser made of light. The last tusk mark dissolves. But the decision doesn't. You take a step backward, then another. The wind brushes your ear like a whisper. Enough. A random, irrelevant fact flutters across your mind. Platypuses, which evolved much later, can sense electric fields through their bills. Completely unrelated to turtles, but somehow it makes sense right now. Another reminder that animals have always perceived the world in ways we can't. Maybe that's what this has been, a lesson in perception. You thought you were watching a fight. You weren't. You thought you were watching a dance. Close, but no. You were witnessing a decision, not made in a moment, but across lifetimes. Across slow, spiral-shaped centuries. A decision to press forward or not, to meet or not. To continue the ritual or leave it resting in the sand like an old song hummed only once. And now the sun is gone. Only a line of orange remains on the horizon, trembling gently with the surface of the water. The turtle is gone. The reef is quiet. The marks have all faded, but one thing remains. You, in the shallows, still feeling the moment of pause. The sea is open now. No spirals, no turtles. Just the long stretch of shallow water, lit only by the dimming sky and the occasional gleam from something buried just below the surface. You wade slowly, quietly following the ghost trail left by the turtle's final glide. It's gone, but its movement lingers like warmth in a chair after someone leaves. Behind you, the reef is a fading silhouette. Ahead, the horizon is a smear of dusk-colored gray, the kind of color you'd find on the edge of a worn seashell. And for the first time in this long, strange day, you realize you're further from shore than you intended. You're not lost, but you are alone. You drift now, not swimming, just letting the tide tug your weight with gentle, aimless suggestions. The current isn't cold anymore, not exactly warm either. It just exists. Like everything else here, present, persistent, unbothered by your questions. And then softly you see it. A shell smaller than the others sliding beneath the surface like a whisper. It's moving without urgency, drifting with the tide not against it. You expect it to veer, to dive, to shift course. It doesn't. It's leaving. No spiral, no ritual, just the long, slow drift of a creature choosing not to engage. A different kind of decision. You follow because, well, what else are you going to do? As you move, the seafloor shifts beneath you. Gone are the sandbanks and the kelp clusters. Now it's flatter, emptier. Like a forgotten hallway at the back of a temple. The occasional ripple, the faint trace of a flipper trail, but mostly just blank sediment. The ocean's pause button. The turtle in front of you continues. It's not looking back. It doesn't need to. Whatever happened earlier, whoever faced whom, it's done. There's nothing left to resolve. No audience to return to. So, just water and memory and a direction. It glides toward deeper water. You hesitate, not because you're afraid, but because you know this is where things diverge. One turtle returned to the spiral. This one is headed away, and you get the strange sense that you're watching the end of something, maybe not the ritual, but the era that needed it. A callback echoes in your mind. Remember the ancient scars etched into the old turtle's shell? Those weren't just accidents, they were records. Fossils not of bone, but of choice, of restraint, of presence. And now this one smooth-shelled and quiet chooses something else: absence. The turtle continues. You stop, because even though the water welcomes you, even though the tide is gentle, even though you could follow, this isn't your direction. You turn back. As you move toward the reef again, the water grows shallow. The shells become more familiar. The spiral marks, faint, erased, appear now and then in the silt like old footprints trying not to be remembered. One is almost intact. You run your fingers through it. It disappears instantly. You smile anyway. Here's a delightful oddity to distract you. Sea turtles navigate using the Earth's magnetic field, like internal compasses with built-in roadmaps. Hatchlings remember the magnetic signature of their birthplace and use it to return decades later. It's less science, more magic with peer review. Maybe that's what these turtles are doing, navigating something deeper than territory. Something older than migration. A pull, not just across space but time. Ritual. Memory. You kneel in the shallows now. The water is barely knee-deep again. You can see your shadow stretching long beneath you, rippling like a tired flag. There's a calm here that wasn't here before. Not stillness, just peace. Then you catch a final glimpse. Far to the west, just before the light vanishes entirely, the last turtle breaches the surface. A gentle, rounded arc of shell. No splash, just emergence. It inhales. You can hear it, barely a soft gasp of air. Then it sinks again without fanfare. Gone. The decision has been made. You turn to look inland. The shoreline is still distant but not unreachable. The reef behind you murmurs with quiet life. Again, fish flickering reeds, shifting, a single flat crab waving its claws like a conductor who's missed his cue. You move toward it slowly. Every step leaves a mark now. The sand is firmer, the tide retreating just a little. You glance down and notice your footprints overlap the final spiral. Not out of disrespect, just sequence. Life continues, even when the ritual ends. You pause once more, turn back. Nothing. No tusks, no shells, no watchers, just a wide fading sea. A sea that has decided, gently, silently. And you nod and walk on. You reach the shallowest part of the tide flats just as the last strands of sunlight vanish. The water is ankle deep now, cool and laced with tiny flecks of detritus. Plant matter, shell shards, bits of soft silt drifting toward stillness. You slow your pace. Everything slows. Then you see them, the marks. Not spirals, not trails, something more deliberate. Deep grooves in the sand, wide and crescent-shaped, overlapping in pairs, like mirrored tusk impressions. They stretch outward from a low rise in the seafloor, like the rays of a submerged sun. You drop to a crouch. These aren't fresh. The edges are blurred, softened by time and tide. But they haven't vanished, not yet. The sea hasn't reclaimed them entirely. These are relics, not fossils, not quite, but messages carved into the present by creatures that no longer remain. You move your hand across one of the grooves. It fits the arc of your palm, curves gently under your fingers. Too large for claws, too symmetrical for erosion. Tusk marks. Left behind by turtles you never saw. Perhaps generations before the ones you followed. Perhaps centuries before. The idea lands quietly in your chest. You're walking through memory. The seabed here is a canvas, and the turtles have signed it over and over, not in language but in motion. Each curved line is a record of a choice, a refusal, a pause, and now here they are, half buried beneath your feet. The marks stretch for yards in every direction, fainter as they radiate outward, like fossil calligraphy, or an alphabet too slow for human comprehension. One pair of grooves intersects a third, forming an almost perfect Y shape in the sand. You blink and realize you've seen this shape before earlier today at the site of the older duel. You thought it was incidental. Now it looks intentional. Historians still debate whether these arrangements were part of turtle territorial mapping or just behavioral echoes. The Y shape might have meant something, or nothing, or everything. It's hard to say when no one speaks Tusk. But standing here, it feels like something. You follow one arc until it leads you up the slope of the low sand rise. At the top, there's a faint depression, oval, shallow. A resting spot maybe. A pause in the ritual. You sit there now, placing your weight where a turtle once settled. The groove beneath your hand curves forward like an invitation. You trace it. The sand is cool, grainy. Small shells crunch under your fingers. You find a thin fragment of ivory, a broken tusk tip barely longer than a matchstick. It's light, dry. Somehow it feels older than everything else here. You slip it into your palm and close your hand. You're not the first to witness this. You won't be the last, but you're the only one here now in this exact moment with this exact collection of marks and dusk and water. This arrangement will never happen again. The next tide will come and smooth it all away. That's the cruel magic of the sea. It remembers, and then it forgets. Somewhere behind you, a wave collapses softly against a sandbar. You don't turn. You just listen. Here's a small oddity for you. The shell of a turtle grows by layering keratin, which forms scutes individual plates that leave rings like trees. Some researchers think you can roughly estimate a turtle's age by counting them, but it's unreliable. Because turtles, like stories, don't always leave neat timestamps. The grooves under you. No scutes, no rings, just impressions. Fleeting records of encounters no one else will ever interpret the same way. You rise again, knees creaking. Your shadow, long and blurry now, passes over the sand markings like a final closing curtain. You begin walking again back toward the shallows, retracing your path. But the marks don't disappear beneath your feet. They merge. Your steps intersect with the tusk lines, blend with them. It's not erasure, it's continuation. As if by walking here you're participating, not as a rival, not even as a witness, just as someone present. The sand holds it all for now. Tomorrow it won't. But that's the thing about ritual. It doesn't depend on permanence. It just depends on being seen. You stop again at the edge of the flats and glance back one last time. The marks are already fading, softened by your wake. Kissed by the wind, dissolved by the invisible current sliding under the surface. You wait, half hoping for a turtle to reappear. Just one more silhouette. One more spiral. Nothing. Only silence. But not empty silence. Satisfied silence. Like a sigh after finishing the last page of a book you didn't expect to love. The tide presses forward. The grooves begin to vanish. But they were real. You saw them. You walked them. You added to them. And for a while, that's enough. The tide moves on without apology. It slides in with steady confidence, smoothing over the grooves as if laying down fresh linen over an old bed. The spiral is gone now, wiped clean, erased not by violence but by rhythm. That slow, hypnotic rhythm the sea has always used to forget what it doesn't need to remember. You stand there longer than you should, watching the water do its work. It swells, glimmers, glides forward in increments. Soon, it'll reach your ankles again, then your knees. The marks are vanishing beneath it one by one like soft footprints on a stage after the curtain falls. You step back. This isn't your space anymore. It was never yours, really. You were a guest in an old cathedral of mud and movement where the choir sings with tusks and shells and no one claps when it's over. They just breathe. They just continue. As you retreat, you notice something in the sand. One mark remains. Not part of a spiral, not part of a trail, a simple curve. Shallow, almost decorative. It rests on the slope of the sandbar like someone left it there on purpose. A signature, a reminder, or just the one line the tide didn't reach in time. You bend down and press your palm against it. The shape cradles your fingers, and you can feel the pressure, faint but present, of tusk against earth. Like the moment when two ancient creatures paused and agreed silently not to finish what they started. Because maybe that's what true rituals do. They don't end. They release. A small flicker moves at the edge of your vision beneath the water, now waist deep. A ripple. Not threatening. Not large. Just life going about its business again. A fish. A ray. A turtle. You don't check. You don't need to. The story isn't about them anymore. It's shifted as all old stories do, from event to echo. From spectacle to meaning. And now you're the echo. You move back toward the shallows. The sea behind you doesn't pull it. Let's go. That's how you know it's over. Let's go sideways for a second. Did you know there's a species of soft-shelled turtle that can breathe through its throat lining while buried in mud for months? It doesn't swim. It doesn't dig. It just rests. Stillness as survival. Movement isn't always the answer. Here in this water-heavy dusk, you finally understand that. You find your footing on a firm patch of sand and glance once more over your shoulder, just in case. The tide has done its work. The grooves are gone, the spirals erased, the stage cleared. But something remains. You feel it in your chest. Not heavy, just settled. The knowledge that something passed through this place and left behind no ruins needed. You walk again, slower now. The tide follows politely behind you like a butler seeing off a guest who stayed just past midnight. The sky overhead has faded to a soft charcoal, stars beginning to blink open, hesitant and few. One falls while you watch its arc, so gentle it almost looks like a tusk laid across the sky. And maybe, just maybe, the stars are spiraling too. You reach a ridge in the sand where the shallows begin to slope back toward land. There are no more turtle marks here, no more shells, just dunes of untouched silt and the hush of a world closing one eye. You sit just for a moment. You close yours too, not to sleep, just to feel everything slow down. The water, the light, the pulse of time itself. You've seen something old tonight, older than cities, older than bones, older than us, and you didn't have to name it to feel it. You didn't need to understand it to know it mattered. You only had to be still. To watch, to witness the gentle duel. You don't know how long you sit there. The stars gather above you like slow applause, not loud or flashy, just quiet recognition for staying this long. The sea glistens in ribbons of soft silver, and the wind moves through your hair with the gentleness of a goodbye. Everything is soft now. The sharpness has drained from the water. The tension has bled out of the reef. Even the sand once rippled with movement has smoothed into a patient hush. You walk again, retracing steps you barely remember taking. The tide has reached its highest point and now begins its slow retreat. And with it, what was once visible becomes memory. The fish return to their casual zigzags. The squids presumably to their theatrical nonsense. Something snorts from beneath the mangroves, a lungfish probably clearing its schedule. The world resets itself not with a bang, but with the shrug of a place that's seen everything already. But something draws your eye just offshore, half buried in a patch of coarse coral sand. A shape, rounded, pale, half cracked. You wade out toward it, the water warm against your calves now, as if the sea wants you to feel welcome just this once. You kneel beside it and sweep the silt gently away with your hands. It's a fragment of shell, wider than your palm, curved, faintly ridged, part of a carapace long since detached from its owner. The edges are rough in places, worn in others. And on the underside, there's a patch of discoloration, almost like a burn mark or a bruise, fossilized in calcium. You turn it over, brush more sand away, and see something stranger. A groove. Not natural, not made by sea movement or decay. A deliberate mark. Two shallow lines forming a curve. Not a full spiral, not even a complete arc, but suggestive. Like someone started to carve something, then stopped. A beginning that never got to be a middle. You run your finger along the groove. It fits. It's old, older than today, older than this tide, older maybe than your species, but someone made this mark. Not for you, not for anyone, just because. Because sometimes when you live long enough, you leave a mark, even if you never meant to. You sit there, the shell in your lap, water pooling gently around your knees, and you begin to wonder how many turtles passed this way. How many spirals overlapped, rubbed out, repeated. How many stories were told here without a single word? Historians still debate whether these fragments were ever used intentionally, carried repurposed, handed off like messages. There's no proof. But holding it now, you wonder if some marks were meant to be found. Not understood, just found. You place the shell fragment back in the sand, angled slightly so the curve catches the moonlight. Then you stand, letting the water slip from your skin. The tide's already tugging at your ankles again, heading home. So you do too. Your path back is slow. You pass over the old spiral site, now smoothed beyond recognition. Only you remember it now. Not the turtles, not the tide, not the sand, just you. But that's enough. You climb onto a slightly raised patch of shoreline where the water only laps at your toes. The stars are brighter here, crisper, like ancient eyes watching you with interest but no judgment. You glance back. The sea is empty. No silhouettes, no tusks, no watchers in the reeds. Just the soft breathing of a world that's decided to forget again. You inhale deeply, the air thick with salt and story. You exhale slow, careful. And just like that, the sea forgets. It's full night now. The sky above you is soaked in velvet blue, dotted with stars that blink like prehistoric embers. Faraway fires lit long before turtles ever dreamed of tusks. The sea has gone still again, a sheet of glass draped over an ancient stage. Whatever drama unfolded here today has slipped into memory, swallowed by the tide and wrapped in silence. You stand at the edge of the shallows, feet half buried in cool sand, watching the moon rise like a low-slung lantern behind a curtain of sea mist. It glows faintly orange tonight, like the inside of a shell held too long in your hand. You wonder if the turtles can see it, or if they feel it on their backs warming them through the darkness. You walk a little farther, letting the lapping waves trace your ankles with their soft exhale. The water's calm, but you feel something else moving, something beneath it, not physical, not threatening. Just a shift, a turning page. The story is over. Not in the way stories usually end, not with final words or applause, but in the way only oceans know how to end things, by carrying them gently away. There are no more spirals now, no more dancers, no more silent duels played out in ripples and sand. All that remains is suggestion. A few flecks of broken shell scattered across the sea floor like punctuation marks. A smooth patch of reef still glowing faintly where a tusk once drew a line and meant it. You lower yourself into the water once more, waist-deep, eyes half closed. The sea is warmer now, not hot, just agreeable, like it's inviting you to sit with it one last time, to be still, to remember. You don't need to speak, there's no one to hear you. But if you did, maybe you'd say, I saw them, I saw the gentle duel, I stood in the spiral. I watched the pause that meant everything. That's the gift, isn't it? Not the memory of the clash, but the memory of the not clash, the choice to almost, the decision to hesitate, to live. The water ripples gently around your chest. A breeze pushes through the reeds behind you, carrying the scent of salt, rotting seaweed, and something faintly floral. Maybe the ghost of ancient algae still blooming beneath the moon. You tilt your head back and look up. The stars don't care, but they don't look away either. And suddenly that's enough. A soft shape moves through the water near your knee. You glance down, heart pausing, but it's only a crab slowly walking in tight circles around your foot. It bumps your toe, clicks once, and scuttles away like it forgot what it was doing in the first place. You laugh, quietly. The kind of laugh that doesn't rise above your breath. You sit there until the water cools, again until the moon pulls itself fully into the sky and casts silver across the old battlefield that no longer remembers it was won. You sit until even the crickets on the shore forget you're still here. And finally you rise, carefully, like waking up from something older than sleep. You walk away from the tide not looking back. You don't need to. You carry it now. The spirals, the tusks, the quiet pause, the gentle duel that never needed a winner. The sea forgets. But you don't have to. Not tonight. Not ever. The shallow sea remembers nothing, but you do. You came to witness something ancient, two tusked turtles older than empires, engaged in a ritual not of rage but of rhythm. In slow circles and gentle shoves, they danced a duel no one fully understands. Historians still debate whether it was combat courtship or something entirely other. You watched as their spirals grew tighter, then paused. You saw the decision to pull away rather than collide. A silent agreement made under the warm shallows where memory lingers in the sand longer than the tide allows. You followed their marks through coral groves and soft silt. Saw younger turtles learning the rhythm. Felt the sea freeze when a cold current carried a shadow through it, something old, something fast, something unwelcome. And still, the turtles endured, not by force but by presence, by choosing not to finish what others would have started. In the quiet that followed, you wandered through the remnant spirals, etched like ancient calligraphy, broken shell fragments bearing curves too deliberate to be accidents. You touched the grooves with your fingertips, walked over them with your own 2 feet, and became part of the ritual by simply being there. By the time the tide washed it all away, you understood some stories are not about action, they're about the moment of pause, the refusal, the shared breath between creatures who could fight but choose not to. You left the sea not with answers but with echoes, and tonight those echoes are yours to keep.